Hi, this is Sally, and today I'm going to be showing you, or at least I'm hoping to show you, how to fix this problem. I have two of these to fix, one on a different sofa and this one. The other one is going to give me a template because this one is ripped all the way across the front here. It won't work, so let's get on with it. The first thing I'm going to do is to remove this. Trying to find the start and finish is a little bit awkward because I don't want to ruin the fabric that's good. It's irritating that it's being top stitched because it makes everything a little bit awkward. You see, this seam has given, but it's also given along here. There's nothing I can do about that. So I'm just going to remove this too. I don't want to go further over because I think that's the top of the actual arm of the chair. So I don't want to be removing too much. I want it exactly on this seam. My eyesight's so bad, I really don't want to get too close. And it'll take a little minute to get all of this off, but I need this because this is my template. I've managed to unstitch it from the seam there, and all I'm going to do is cut the stitches, literally just the stitches, top and bottom, so I can pull this out. And I'll make my way all the way over to the other side because there's a seam like this on this side. So this one, I've just removed all of this all the way around like I had previously. Now, upsettingly, there's a little tear here. Also, the stitching on this side had given. I've got some bottom cloth here that I use on chairs. Fold that over, and I'm going to use this over that area when I glue it all into place. I'm going to squeeze a little bit on the back here. Oops, a daisy, like that. Don't want to put too much on, and pop that down on top. I don't want to get it on me, so I am going to put a piece of towel behind there and just lightly push it together. Now, it should only take a short while to dry. By pressing it, it seems to have shut quite nicely on that side, and I'll be able to sew it through on this side. I think I might just add a little bit more glue around here just to make sure that it's fine. Although, to be honest, because I'm stitching, it shouldn't make any difference at all. Now, this one's awkward because it came apart where the decorative stitching was. I will, again, use some of the bottom cloth because that will give it a little bit more stability. I'll cut that in half. I think I'm going to have to just cut back a little bit further so that I can really get into here, which unfortunately means I have to sew a little bit further back when I put it together. I'm also going to draw a line, which is a little bit difficult because there's nothing to really lean on, where my glue can go to on that side, which means I'm just going to put the glue that side all the way to the end. Now, this is a flexible glue, so I should be able to maneuver everything as and when I get to it, but I think that will do for now. I'll pop that on the area that I drew around, and again I'm going to squeeze it into place with my towel because I don't want to be stuck to it. It takes about 3 minutes to dry. Now that that side is done, I am going to just put the glue along here, not above the stitching. Now, hopefully that will just automatically line up with that. I think the best thing is if I put that on the back like that and then just push that into place on the front. Let's see if that holds. As this side's been drying, I've just been pushing those white threads down. There's not very much I can do about them, but hopefully they will stay hidden and become part, oh dear. Okay, my paper towel has to stay there too. I'll cut that out. There's not much I can do about it because there is white on the back here. I'm going to let that dry. So I have my front out and I need to make matching pair. So I'll be cutting one way and then the other way. But difficult to say whether there's an up and down grain on this or not. I'm just going to have to hold it and cut very carefully like this to get the shape. I'm not in my own house, and so I'm having to do it a little bit ad lib here. Turn it around because I had to cut out, so there is no seam allowance. So I think this case will go across like this and down. Now this is the outside of the seam allowance, so I'm just going to go straight up there. And while I've got this as it is, I'm going to cut the other one out because this will hold. My only worry is this is actually a thicker fabric than the one I've just taken off. The gentleman knows that it's not going to be the same colour. I am going to draw a line like this. That is my sew line. And again here, lay that down, make sure that's even, and again draw my sew line in. This is really important because if I don't get this in, which is the first part, I won't be able to get the rest in. They're not particularly even, but they're even enough for this project. This side I'm going to line up with the inside of that seam, which goes there, and then I have to line it up with here. So let me see how that goes. That goes to there. I'm going to pop a pin in here to hold that, and then it comes across to the inside. Well, actually that seam comes this way. That's a pest. On this side it goes straight through, and on this side it comes forward. That's fine. Folded that as far back as I can. I'm going to open up this seam here. Take all those pesky little threads out. The best way to do it is to stitch down, because then this side will be secure. I'm going to line this seam up as best I can. I need to take that back a little bit more. So I'm going to open this seam up just a little bit, because I can start sewing from here all the way around, and that will hold that in place. Now I've explained I can't do the top stitching. I wouldn't want to anyway, because I won't be able to get the right colour. I've opened this seam up and pinned it across the top there, and I've also opened this one up and pinned so that the seam allowances are even. Now let's see if we can work this out. I'm going to start at the top, over stitch that so I know it's together, and then I'm going to do a running stitch, but it is going to have to be very small, less than 1/4 of an inch, following that seam down. And the stitch length originally is about 1/4 of an inch, so if I do less than 1/4 of an inch, then that will give it about the same amount of structure. Do that all the way to the bottom. As I get closer to the bottom, it becomes more awkward, because the seam wants to go that way, and I can't easily get it. Well, I might be able to. It's ripping here. No, it isn't. It's not ripped there. That's okay. So I'm just going to take it as close as I can to that bottom. I might have to do it from the outside. Move that pin, because it's done what it needed to do. And I think I'll just pin across the top here again, in to where the seam goes, so no damage can be done. And then I just stitch in like I do usually. In and out. There, it's a bit bigger than I would like it, but it's going to have to do. And then into the black side, so that's where it came out, that's where it needs to go in. You see that there? I can push that in, and I'm not sure if I'm going to catch that because it's right on the edge here. I'll see what I can do. I'll take the stitch out a little bit lower, like that. So now I've got to start twisting everything in here. What I can do is I can take a stitch down lower, like this, into this seam here. I think that will make it a little bit more sturdy. There we go. Push all of this back again. This keeps falling down. I do keep trying to move this foam back. I don't want to take it all out because I might not be able to force it back in. So if that's going to go there, let's see where I think I am on the front here. I'm coming up on my purple seam. So I think what I need to do is to take some of this bulk out on the seam only. I haven't cut my thread or anything, I've just cut that. That is so, like on dressmaking, it will close up a little bit better without all of that there. I'm going to have to carefully twist everything round. I'm going to come out here like that, just on the outside of the original seam, literally on the outside, and I'm going to come up a little way in and then through from the bottom up. There we go. So long as I come out on that seam mark, I should be fine. Go down on that seam mark. There's my thread where I came out of. Down and up. I'm using a straight needle rather than a rounded needle because those rounded needles take bigger stitches than a straight one. And I'm going to work my way carefully and obviously rather slowly because this is a little bit higgledy-piggledy across. If you had a softer fabric, this would work quite well. I just don't want to be cutting any more stuff off here. And then I can see where I came through here by my finger up and hit that seam. If I do that all the way across, it'll go in. I think that'll be fine. After all, it would be twisted anyway because we've got that arch. That's what gives it that flare out. I've sewn all the way across and now I need to pull it into this corner. Basically, I've got to pull this back, so I'm going to cut in here so that I can twist the fabric, and I need to bring it along here and attach it to this side. I'm going to have to work this one out because it's not that easy. Probably down into this corner so I can twist that under and force it into place. I'll have to put another nick in here so that I can do that. On this side, I went down into the arm, which is how it is, and then just sewed my little 1/2 inch seam here as straight as I could because it was a little bit awkward doing it, but it should be fine. And I'll just finish that off with a cast off stitch. I also put a cast off stitch right here, although I carried on using the same thread just to give it a little bit more firmness on that turn. Pull all of that out, massage it a little bit because I kept on pushing it back. I brought my needle up about 1 inch inside here, and I'm going to sew down and across like I usually do, like this, just to make sure that that seam stays put. Because I cut back on it, it means it's a weakness, but if I sew through like this, I should actually catch the stitches underneath and secure them as I go. I wish I used a thimble sometimes. Some fabrics are worse than others for damaging your fingers. So now what I have to do is follow the stitch line which is here along the top like this, and try to get those stitches nice and small and quite tight, just so that they'd be like sewing machine stitches. Fold my new seam down and into place. Always try to remember where you finish off, because when you're doing this stitch it's quite easy to get a little bit turned around and do 2 stitches on the same side if you're not careful. Come in where that seam is and then sew all the way across the front. The stitches should be about 1/4 inch across the front here. Pull the foam forward from the inside so it fills up the space, and then I'm going to fold over the new seam on the other side so I have equal seam allowance all the way across the front. It is a case of just continually folding the fabric down because you don't want it to go up. Has to continue going down like it does on the rest of it. As with the first one that I showed you, I'm going to sew this into position down here and then across. So there's really no difference in this at all. I'll do an overstitch at the top just to make sure that the top holds fast, and then I'm going to make little stitches to follow the seam. It is such a bind because it is in an awkward place. It's really not easy to get to. As long as I hold those raw seams together, it'll be fine. I'll make my way down to the bottom. I started off doing running stitch and then into back stitch, and I've come into the corner here. There's really not much I can do on here apart from do some back stitching. So I'm going to back stitch a couple of times into this corner here, hopefully just in front of those white stitching. Now I'm going to follow my line here, which is the original sew line. I'm going to back stitch there again, and now I'm going to do a running stitch just in front of the original line. If you get knots in your thread, just pull it out with your needle like that and then just pull it in and everything should go through. There we go. And then on over to the other side. On this side it's awkward because I've got to go a little bit further and then allow this to turn back on itself, which is a bit of a bind. I think I can get it right into this corner and then allow it to do that. I might have to just cut slightly into there like that so that I have the ability to see what it is I'm doing as I stitch it in, and I'm going to overstitch it here so that I then have a good seam to be able to sew out that's secure. So a couple more back stitches and into that corner and then secure, just like I did it on the other side. Some things aren't as easy as they look. There's one back stitch there, just like I would if I was casting off, and that will secure that into that position so I can change direction. I can come out along this line here. I might not want to do what I want it to do, so I'm going to go through here and out into there like that, find the stitch there and come back through. I'm changing direction because this needs to come up the side. Fold that over so I can see where the fold line is and back through like that. Come along about 1/4 inch on my fold line and go back through to here. As I get further along this seam, it will start pulling in together where it needs to be and in the right angle. It's just a bit of a bind to start off with at the bottom. There's that one and through like that, and again work out where my fold line is and come in through there with my stitch. Now at the top here I'm going to slightly alter the seam, and I'm going to bring this seam out and across so that it holds the old seam here closed, and it should give a little bit of strength because I'll be coming over here. It's easy to do. All you've got to do is just alter the way it looks on the inside. I'm also going to start sewing it from the outside, so I'm going to go in here and across like that, and then into here and across. I can come down and overstitch there in a second just to make sure it stays. Although it alters the front slightly, it doesn't alter it too much. There we go, and I'll cast off a couple of times just to make sure it holds fast, and then I'll come back down in a minute. Glue seems to have settled, but I'll give it a little bit longer as I sew across the top, just like I did on the other side. This is the main thing that I was worried about. Now, as before, I'm going to have to come in and behind the stitching by about an inch, like that, and then sew across. Hopefully that will keep everything in place. And then I'll just pull this in and carry on going round just as I did on the other arm. This one's more awkward because there's not very much space between here and here for me to be able to sew, but it'll get pulled in. I have sewn all of this in. It looks pretty good. It will last a while. Thank you for joining me on this project. It's quite a simple repair. It just takes quite a bit of time to do. I think he's going to be pleased with that. If you want to see more from me, please subscribe, hit the bell button, and a few thumbs up would be brilliant. And in the meantime, see you later. Ciao.